Welcome to the Galaxy Man Show. So, for my guest today is this incredible person known by the name of Grimm. Grimm runs this incredible community called the GG5 community. Incredible Power Rangers fan community and GG5 all the way. So, I'm proud to announce Grimm on my show for today as the guest. And yeah, let's invite Grimm on and have a chat with Grimm. Yo, what's up, Grimm? Really good. Well, I just want to say first up, thank you so much for taking the time to join my show. So, yeah, if you can give us a bit of background and we'll right into the questions.
Little bit of backstory. I go by Grimm, the Dragon Tamer. I am in the Power Ranger community and also the cards community. I mainly do customs in both. And I've built this community, GG5, basically around what the GGS has become, and then also to building it around, like I said, kind of like the multiverse, but also like a fan film aspect type of a thing. So that's kind of a little bit of my backstory of myself. I'm from Guam, 28 years old, and honestly just excited to answer some of these questions because usually I just ramble. So
awesome. So we'll dive right into the questions now, Grimm. So for my very first question, we'll dive right into the GG5. So with GG5 community, how did you come up with creating the whole brand of GG5?
So I'll start back a little bit farther. For those of you guys who know, I go by Grimm. Grimm being the name that I wanted to go by, the moniker that I wanted to go by when I was roughly around like 8 years old. For 3 years, I kept it in my head. The two Grimms that make that Grimm are Greg Eagles, the voice actor of Grimm from The Grimm Adventures of Billy and Mandy, and MF Grimm, rapper. For those of you guys know, I freestyle, I rap, I do all that kind of stuff, lyricist. He was the other half, and I kept it a secret mainly because of the hip-hop part and the writing. When I turned 11, that's when I finally started to tell people because people started to realize, oh, he wants to rap, he wants to be a writer. That's what he wants to do. So I started to tell people, call me Grimm. So I would learn from these guys, you know, from Greg Eagles, his Grimm on Cartoon Network. How could you make a kid's show based on the Grim Reaper, but still be happy and fun? And then with MF Grimm, he draws so much from Superman, Jet Jaguar, Godzilla, you know, for his inspirations. So he was the one who kind of got me into like the whole, like, you know, after a certain age, you don't necessarily have to give up superheroes, because I was really investing into him during my teen years. So I kept with MMPR, Godzilla, dinosaurs, all that stuff with those two. And then I went through a bunch of hard stuff myself, which basically, like, I started to envelop the kid Grimm part where people would start to classify my Grimm as a completely different type of Grimm. So it's kind of like a mesh between the two. So I would always tell people, you know, I'm not necessarily the Grimm part of my name of what I'm saying. It's more my expression of what I've gone through, what I know I'm going to go through, given my circumstances being a kid, and then trying to basically save a bunch of people on the way after knowing, I guess, canonically throughout history, who the Grim Reaper is. I started to, like, really try to do that, I guess, in real time. I tried to save people. I tried not to speak to people, certain people, because I felt like, you know, if I were to speak a certain way, it might rub off on them wrong, or it might not be the right thing they need to hear, because I'm like very graphic, very descriptive. So when I started to stream, I wanted to figure out, this is fast forwarding 10 years later, throughout all that stuff, I wanted to figure out something that I could just say. Everywhere in hip hop, everywhere in music, movies, there's always these acronyms, these sayings, these like little slogans that like mean a lot. It's not just like they say it to say it, and then other people start to say it, and then, you know, so I thought of, you know, just start telling people to work on their brain, and I was like, no, that's not it. I need to make it about me and investing myself into these people. So from there, I started to say, GGS Grimm Gang, welcome to the live stream. Thank you guys for tuning in. we're going to have an exciting one. Now, for those of you guys who hear the current one, it's a little bit remixed from that original one. And then I started to tell people a blend of the two. That's how I start the live streams at the end, tell you to work on your brain. I'm here. And then I started to notice this wave of people who started to hit me up on Messenger, Instagram. Hey, I need help. Hey, I'm thinking about ending it. I don't know what to do. And that was the first time when I was 26. I'll never forget about it. That's when I actually felt this position of people are gravitating towards me during those final milliseconds. And I've done a pretty good job about steering people the other way, which, you know, I'm pretty thankful for. Sometimes you can't save them all, which has been the rough part. But when I say GG5, GGS Grimm Gang, the whole point is to basically say, you're a part of this. When I say it to you, you say it back. When you see it, you think instantaneously what you were like the second you even figured out what the GG5 was. Remember that. Remember that as your base, your standard. Now, when I talk about why I continue to say it, why I branded it, why I've meshed so many ideologies together, fan films, backgrounds, it's because I've started to notice what's important to you that you express will eventually, hopefully, not always, will resonate to other people, become important enough to them, similar to how when people love music groups, movies, you know, like it's important to those people who created it, and then eventually it becomes important to us as fans. Now, my community, I wouldn't call them fans, I would call them family, always, first off and foremost. My family, the GG5, when I changed the S to a 5, that was when I really said, okay, you know what? Enough training wheels, enough with the, you know, practice runs and, you know, holding on to, you know, what you think you should say, what you shouldn't say. This is your role. This is what you have to do. GG5, and that's kind of what I've been doing, and that's where the GG5 went.
So on to my very next question for you. So with the whole GG5 brand, as you explained, so what's your like earliest memory of Power Rangers? Like what was your most earliest memory?
I've been asked that question a bunch, and I have two really awesome stories, which is why I customized a Pink Ranger morpher for a Red Ranger morpher. This is going to be an awesome story. My earliest memory that I didn't know I had was apparently I was taken home. I was born in Guam, so my family wasn't that well off. You'll probably find like 3 baby pictures of me, maybe. But apparently, and this is, my grandma had 12 kids. There's a whole bunch of witnesses. I was taken home in a Pink Ranger onesie. A pterodactyl Pink Ranger onesie. As a boy, remember that. I was taken home, and then my aunt was like, oh, I thought he was going to be a girl, this and that, you know, because the whole village concept, and there's like news travel different. So like when it was important to show up or come, when the village was making food and, you know, the babies finally arrived, like the whole during the pregnancy stuff and, oh, baby showers, not really a thing. When the baby's there though, party. So my aunt, I love her to this day, my Aunt Yvonne, she thought I was going to be a girl. I got taken home in a pink Power Ranger onesie, and that was my earliest non-memory of Power Rangers I had. Earliest memory of Power Rangers that I had, shouts out to my grandpa, GG5, reason for a lot of this stuff. When I was 4 years old, I remember him running up to me, and he was telling me, hey, take all these orange cones and put them on the side yard and, you know, just go do what you want. Because I would do this weird stuff. By the way, this is going to be weird. I've never had a curfew from the ages of 0 and up, roaming the village. Even when I moved to America, open doors, I could go wherever I wanted, you know. So in Guam, I would come back with all this weird stuff like tires and, you know, and I'd play with them, roll them down hills. And my grandpa's like, hey, I found these cones at work. I would follow him to work a lot. He would work on cars. I would play with the tools. He's like, here's these cones, go have fun. So I remember I had these cones, and for some reason I was like pushing him around and fighting him. I went inside that very day. I remember this whole day. My dog George was there, rest in peace. And I went inside the house, and Power Rangers, the first episode I ever watched, I got asked this question yesterday, Gung Ho, with the Trini episode. I remember watching that episode. I sat there probably for the entirety that Power Rangers was on, and I remember getting fueled, and I'm like, okay, how do I let this out? So I ran outside to those cones. I set them all up like putties. You know what I mean? Like, because they were really tall cones, like 5-foot cones, and I was a little 3-foot munchkin. So I just set up these cones like putties. I had like 6 of them, you know, and I was just boom, boom, like practicing, kicking, you know, morphing, thinking I knew what I was doing, you know, like tackling them to the ground, like, and that was my first earliest memory.
Awesome.
Of
So on
Power Rangers.
to that next question. So what would be your like most favorite season of all time of Power Rangers and why?
I'm going to exclude MMPR because everyone knows that's my all-time favorite season. I can go on for years about connections. So my favorite outside of MMPR will probably be, well, this is the types. In Power Rangers in Space and the Y part, because that was one of the things that really made me love mashups. For those of you who know, I do a lot of mashups with a bunch of different things, like crossing over fandoms. And when I saw the Ninja Turtles on Power Rangers in Space, that was enough for me. And I was, you know, I was getting up to probably like the 8-year-old mark, 9-year-old mark. And I remembered like, this is awesome. And not only did I love the turbo cast going into space already, you know, but it was just like, I loved that aspect about it. But the reason why I froze, SPD is like, to me, when it comes to like writing, like when I try to write my fan film and I think of seasons like SPD, I'm like, oh boy, I got some work to do. So like there's reasons why I like certain seasons over more, but in space, I would
So
probably
on
say.
to my very next question. So who would be your all-time favorite villain from any season of Power Rangers and why? Yeah.
Comic books included. That would have to be my good buddy, Psycho Ranger Mark, which he is the green Psycho Ranger and from the Boom comics and Shattered Past and, you know, all that stuff. Shouts out to them. And everything that they're doing over there at NerdBot is just absolutely awesome. But basically, when I saw him, because I was like waiting for the longest time. I remember in Dino Thunder when they brought Trent on, and I was like, that is the closest thing we'll ever get to a Tommy. You know what I mean? Like to a Tommy style of villain again. And Tommy, of course, was in that season, so it kind of fit right, you know, that he was ushering in this kind of villain. So I was like, we saw what would happen if you bring back the villain in white. And I remember I was like, I'm just waiting for them to make a evil Green Ranger. And then they brought back all of basically the Psychos all at one time, plus a new Psycho. And I was just instantly hooked. Like, I remember like the weapons he had, his name, first of all, Trek. And I was making custom cards at the time. So I was like, I'm going to make custom cards for all the Psychos. Those cards, those prototypes I ended up gifting to Mark. Shouts out to Mark. And he basically, he was my, like, and these are real life inspirations too, outside of the screen. I saw how like gravitated he was to his character. And again, like that's one of the reasons why I fall in love with Rangers, like similar to JDF and his characters. I was like, I love you. On and off screen, you're an awesome villain. Like, that is rad. So, of course, in my figures, he is like giving Draken a run for his money, and he's beating up myself and all the other Rangers, and he's unstoppable. So he would be my
On
favorite.
to my very next question. So if you could be your own Ranger in your very own series, like what color Ranger would you want to be of all time and why? And onto that, if you could have any 5 Ranger team members from your, like for your Ranger, who would you want to team up with and why?
I would go with Red, Zord being the Red Thunder Dragon Zord. That's my favorite Zord of all time. Now, to team up with at Blue, I would probably go with TJ, because TJ, he's like, honestly, he's my favorite Blue Ranger other than Blake Foster. But TJ, as the Blue in Space, he was technically the leader of the show. Like, Andros was always missing somewhere and, you know, like doing his own thing. And he was just like, so he would be Blue. Trini would obviously be yellow, but if not her, it would probably have to be Jacqueline from Beast Morphers. I would probably go with green. I'd probably go with Hector David from Samurai, or I would go with, that's a tough one. That's a tough one because I would say Tommy for green, but I would save him for white. And the reason I would save him for white would be for basically the Zord and for Saba, because you get 2 characters for the price of 1, or 3 characters, if you think of it like that. So I'd put JDF at white. Pink Ranger, I would probably go with, that's a tough one too. There's, Pink, I would have to go with Wild Force, Jessica Carey. I love her character. I love how she wasn't a Pink Ranger. She was basically a White Ranger, but I still classify her as a Pink Ranger in my heart. And honestly, if Red Ranger not other than myself, I'd probably have to go with Lauren from Samurai. I love her character. I love when they do things like that, like take risks and change genders and female roles and stuff like that. I love that. That would probably be my team. I'm missing Black. Black would probably be if Zeo Gold counts as Black, them, because they're my favorites. But I would probably go with Zach for Black, or honestly both Mastodons, Zach and Adam. Yeah, Adam, honestly, even for Green, Zeo Ranger Green, honestly too. So those would be people I would team up with off the top of my head that I can think of. Rangers that like really inspire me. Ones that I didn't think of while I was in the rush. Tyler Brennan, he would be awesome to team up with. Red Ranger. Brennan Mejia. I was thinking of his other name. Honestly, and I think that'd be it. Like, in terms of, like, because I would assume a secondary role. I don't think I'd play a leader role if I was ever, like, behind Legendary Rangers. Even if they weren't a leader themselves, I think I would, like, what do I do here?
So on some of your very next question, so with the whole Power Rangers franchise having incredible projects out like Bloodline of the Grid and all these amazing other projects, Hammond the series, by the way, shout out to Shakna. What did you think of episode 1 of Hammond the series?
I tell this story all the time. I missed a field trip stop at PMC to watch the first episode. Now, I met Tracy and Hammond like shortly after that. And it's like, I've never had that close of like an on-screen experience to meeting them, like to meeting a Ranger so fast. And I remember I still had like the shakes, and then I got a little bit more like nervous, like going up to meet them. And honestly, just seeing like Tracy invested into, she has kids of her own in real life, but paying respects to fan films and, people's universes and stuff like that, and guiding Shankar like literally through a lot of this. And just, I even tell him I go back to even before the Heyman first episode to, when he was basically just, doing interviews, kind of similar to yourself. And I remember I was having that very similar feeling with Austin St. John and myself at Long Beach Collecticon, in a little bit of a different way. But I remember myself just basically having this one-on-one connection and this talk. And then on YouTube, when I saw him and Tracy have that, I was like, that's why Path of the Lost Tyrant started. Like, that's how that all started to bubble and formulate in my brain. Because I was telling him even beforehand, I respect him because he's opened up a door for myself when it comes to Power Ranger fan films, because a lot of people do things that are like a lot of the times, I guess, team-based. There's a starting 5 right out the gate. There's this whole background to story. Like with him in the first episode, there's a lot of mystery. Like I always get drawn back to the alley, before, or that the part where he's on like the road before the fight happens. And I always think about that because in real life, I've been in that situation. And being homeless and all this other stuff, I have been in that situation, just waiting for something after it's all said and done to just tell me like, hey, I'm here for you. you have a mission to finish. Forget what just happened, you know, trying to be a hero in the moment and, you know, all those other things, you know, why me type of situation. That's what I took from Hammond. From Hammond, I tried to look at it also too after getting to know him a little bit more, rewatching it. And I always tell him, I tell him this a lot, I really respect him for his approach on life. Very, very different from people who are a little bit younger than me, who, you know, just have all this knowledge that they might not think they don't have, but they do. And for people like myself, definitely taking notes. He, after getting to know his kind of a mindset and going back and rewatching it, I started to see a lot more of him in it and a lot less more of, okay, this is a fan film that I need to watch and, you know, critique every little moment about it. No, I didn't do that. What I did was I built a relationship with said person instead of having these, like, I guess, cinema judgmental values towards a flick. I really just set that all aside and I said, it's not what's on the screen, it's what he's doing outside to make this even visually possible. So then after getting to meet Tracy and getting to meet and hearing how they talk about it, you know, that's also a different thing. They know what it takes to be a Ranger in the franchise. They know the elimination process. They know the auditioning process. But what they don't know is, hey, I'm a fan of you, and I'm going to devote a section or a quarter of half or full of my life to following in your footsteps. You know, this is something that I say quite often. The reason why I'm very happy that the multiverse kind of, I guess, trend happened at the same time as the mental health blow up, you know, where everybody's talking about mental health. And I've been talking about mental health since I was like 11, 12, trying to save people like, hey, you need to work on your brain. Hey, you're a FAGGOT. Don't tell me to work on my brain. I want to do this, you know, and they would tell me that. They would be like, hey, why do I have to work on my brain? Which drove me mentally insane because I'm like, why is no one listening to me? You know, like what's going on? So with Hammond, I take that, and that's why I wear my morphers now. I always keep two morphers now. This one I've always kept, you know, similar style, but now I keep this one to remind myself that things have to change. You're waiting for signs. That's all you're waiting for. You're waiting for a signal. It doesn't have to necessarily come in the form of a voice, but that's what I took from Hammond. I can see that episode constantly in my head without even having to pull it up. So that's, I guess, my answer to Hammond, which I'm excited for episode 2, 3. And if it's just like he said, if it's a series, if it's one more episode, if it's going to be a movie finale, whatever he wants to do with it, Hammond will always be a part of my Ranger Corps. I've heard Tracy call him son. So there's not a doubter in the world or anybody who can basically tell me what Hammond means to me or what it could mean.
So on to my very next question. So on to that. So I hear that you're involved with another incredible project called Combat in the Grid. A bit about that.
Combat in the Grid, those guys are awesome. Patron.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're getting a little bit of lag.
Yeah.
But you said Combat in the Grid, right? Yep. So shouts out to Michael Patron. I just recently started talking to him. I just had him on the Instagram live. Talked to him basically about, you know, where he got inspired and stuff like that. And I had recently just seen him a couple months prior to learning about what Combat of the Grid was. And I'm super fascinated because shouts out to Latin Nerd Cosplayer as well with this Charizard suit. Because I wasn't really aware that in the Power Ranger community, people were doing mashups to this extent. Maybe it's just per character, or they write a film about it, or they have, you know, multiple connections to different things. But being a mashup person, especially with custom figures, cards, all this other stuff that I do, I never thought that it was this prominent, I guess I would say. So Combat in the Grid, the stuff that they're doing on YouTube, like I said, super fascinating. And Michael's just an awesome person in general. And just everybody that he has on his cast. like I said, that's the dream, I guess, if you're making a fan universe, or if you're making your own universe. I wouldn't even call it a fan universe. If you're making your own sector of this multiverse, you know, let's just say these guys are doing it so well. And I guess it's just really exciting to see, like, someone who started off with one character go into multiple characters, go into multiple reaches. Shouts out to him. I think he has a suit that's available. Check out with him. I think you guys can actually get his Scorpion suit. But he was just walking me through so much stuff and giving me advice and pointers and tips, and, you know, just like that. Those are the types of people that I really love supporting, even if it's just viewing or sharing or liking a post or chit-chatting, making sure that their mental's okay. You know, like, hey, what do you think of this? You know, he commented on a video earlier today, just like flames, just a bunch of fire. And I'm like, that's awesome. You know what I mean? Like, he's tuned in, he's tapped in. So Combat in the Grid, I love that because they show love to other things as well. He's very open about what got him started, which I really appreciate. Like, I super appreciate that about him as well. But he is not afraid to take risks with this. Like, he's expanding this, and that's something that I appreciate. His vision for this is so out there that Combat in the Grid is something that you guys should definitely go tune into. That was an awesome question. I love it.
Thank you.
Great
so
questions.
So my very next question. So with the whole, as I said, Power Rangers franchise is definitely something we all love and adore. So how, as Grimm as a person, how do you, like, with the whole mental health situation, how do you get over, like, depression or anxiety wise?
So growing up, you know, when I first started to get these, like, I guess you would call them symptoms. I try not to call them that anymore, but just so people can understand. I thought it was going to therapy. I thought it was taking medication and stuff like that. I thought it was reading self-help books. I thought it was working out. I thought it was all this stuff. But little did I know, it wasn't any of those. It was simply mastering every single feeling that I have, being isolated with individual feelings with no help. Now, anger, that was the toughest one. But now I use anger as a coping mechanism to actually help me get through major depression. Like, I'm talking about before, when I used to get angry and stuff, people would be like, oh, look at this guy. Now I could get more angry than you'd ever think in my brain for probably about 10 seconds. Shut it off, breathe real quick. But it's really just being able to capsulate it, to really try to do what these, I guess, what these books and stuff are coaching you up to, but they're never really definitive. I wanted something because I'm going to be within my own body for the remainder of my life. That's never going to change. So what I told myself is, okay, you really need to sit down with yourself. You really need to start thinking about what you're feeling, what you're thinking, why you're thinking it, who you're thinking of. The who is probably one of the biggest things ever. Who could be yourself? Who could be a numerator of things? It could be anything. And I say you have to be able to sit alone, like how I am right now. Most of the things I do are isolated. When you sit alone and you think, okay, I'm about to really act on my anger right now, or I'm really about to act on my sadness right now. Or you could say, I'm so happy, I don't know why, I don't deserve any of this, which that one was weird to figure out. The way that I'm able to master it is you have to be able to counterbalance it with the opposite feeling. Like, when I get over happy, I shut myself down immediately so I don't, you know, I tell myself, okay, be careful. You might not get what you asked for, or be careful, you might get exactly what you asked for. So I balance myself out so I don't get upset. But if I get upset, I immediately will tell myself, hey, you're a great person. You tried your best, and balance myself back out. Or maybe I'm getting way too happy because I'm thinking everything's going right. And I'm like, hey, level out, dude. Like, no one can understand you. You're talking way too fast. Bring it back up to here. And I find myself doing that constantly. So it's a repetition type of a thing. If you think of anything from reading books, martial arts, to being a master chef with food, anything. You have to isolate an ingredient and you have to become a master of it and apply it to a dish, of which would be our plethora of problems. And you just got to walk through it. Okay, I'm the chef. This is my kitchen. It's time to make food. Like, oh, oops, burnt my finger. What are you going to do? The order still has to go out. Oops, too much salt. How do you balance that out? Maybe add a little bit of water. Maybe you have to start over. Who knows? But that's the steps that you have to take into becoming mastered with your feelings. And that's what MF stands for. MF Grimm stands for a ton of stuff, but also, too, it's one of the big reason why I'm big on acronyms like GG5. MF stands for mastered feelings. And I've known that since 11 years old, studying this guy, saying, hey, why does he say that? I'm following in his footsteps. Okay, so every time I would think, is this what he's talking about? Nope. Is this what he's talking about? Definitely not. Is this? And now I'm thinking I'm along the lines of understanding like what they're talking about when it comes to how do you handle depression and anxiety. I use anxiety as a coping mechanism now. Depression, I fight that to its core, but you got to be able to balance it and level it out. I know for the remainder of my years, being an anxious person will forever be a part of me. So that's the part I have to deal with. Other people may be depressed for their whole life. There's some scars you can't not look at. You know, there's some scars that just don't go away. And I say this to say this, you got to be able to use, similar to Batman and all this other stuff, you got to be able to use that one as a mechanism, as a coping mechanism, and the other one, you got to fight it to its core, passionately. Like, it's not just going to go away. You're not just going to wake up one day and all your troubles are just going to poof, you know, and they might. And, you know, shouts out to you guys if that happens, like super, super awesome. Like, tell me what that ingredient is, because I want to start making that and serving it to the entire world, you know. But until that happens, I have to be able to say, hey, this is what I have. I have my feeling. And this isn't trying to sound woke or anything like that, like trending stuff. This is literally pages on pages of writing the same thought down and sitting with the same thought and doing all that stuff and saying, why does this keep coming up when this happens? There has to be a reason. And then when I sit and people say, don't stare in the mirror at your demons, that's what I say the GG5 does. I will walk into that darkness and go and grab you and show you the way out. But if you go back in there, you have to bring yourself out. I showed you how to get out. Like, that's why I say you can't save them all. And I deal with this to finish up the question, the depression and anxiety, I deal with it. One, and you guys can do it vice versa. I don't know if you guys don't do it at all. Maybe you should try or start. But anxiety, I cope with it. I use it as a coping mechanism. And depression, I attack it head on. There's no time for that.
I love that. So on to my very next question. So lastly, what's like any projects or anything that you like to announce on the show that you have planned for like 2023 beyond that you like to announce?
I want to announce Path of the Lost Tyrant. Path of the Lost Tyrant is a fan film. It takes place in Earth 823, part of the whole like multiverse thing. Son of John Oliver Scott and Trini Kwan, Earth 823. So basically it's a little bit different, but a lot of the same, kind of like parallel type of a thing going on there. The GG5, I got merch link in my bio to my Instagram if you guys want to get merch like this and other stuff like coffee mugs and things like that. But I really do want to give a huge shout out to the people who have been coming up to me with commissions. Basically commissions for cards, for anything for their cosplay, you know, just anything like that. So huge shouts out to you guys. And next Ranger event, we'll be seeing Nakia Burse and Catherine Sutherland on the 13th of January with my good buddy Goku. So that's what I got planned. So GG5.
Well, I just want to let you know, Grimm, because of all the amazing work that you're doing with your show, your podcast, GG5 and everything, from the Galaxy Man show, myself, I just want to say I'm actually planning on making a GG5 shirt to support your brand and everything for the Galaxy Man show. So if that's okay with you to make the shirt, yeah, I would love to.
That would be awesome, man. Honestly, the reason why I was so happy to come on here,
Thank you.
I've been telling people you're the king of shoutouts. There's like that is my hat off to you, because the whole thing is you got to be able to blend, similar to, I guess, the card community into the Ranger community, now getting into a community like even the podcasting community or the interviewing community, which is something that I just recently started, the GG5 Live on YouTube, guys, also in my bio. I am now looking to you basically, like, what type of questions is he asking per individual, I guess you could say. How is he reading body language? You know, how is he, you know, keeping this fun for himself? Those types of questions I'm asking myself back with the GG5 Live, especially with Path of the Lost Tyrant, because that's where all the news for that will be coming out on. You have opened up a really nice door for me. So I'd like to say thank you. Thank you to you and Hammond, because you two I coupled together in this whole thing. Basically, shouts out to both of you boys, because he showed me basically this is how you get in front of these individuals to pick your brain apart, to ask you questions. You showed me this is how you get your brain picked apart and share it to your audience. So from those two standpoints, man, thank you guys. Go follow the Galaxy Man Show. You're more than welcome to make those shirts. And honestly, just the support itself, if it's to support your show, you can take all the proceeds. The GG5 is good. If you want to help that way, you could throw it down back onto more merch, and we could run a giveaway or something, you know, for other people out there in the community as well. But
I'll definitely make you one.
I do want one. Yeah. So that'd be awesome. So guys, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for having me on, man. This was awesome.
Everyone, as I said I just want to say to end this off, go follow Grimm. He's an inspiration, and with GG5, inspiring so many, sending so much love, and yeah, just to end that off too. So go share the love.
I just want to say one final message, you guys. If it ever gets too serious, if it seriously ever gets too serious, and I'm talking about the final milliseconds, when you make that decision, I want to go commit suicide, and you're thinking about that, if you're at that step and you're like, okay, if that's a thought, what I want you to do in those milliseconds in between going there and even thinking about doing it, I just want you to tell yourself, what is the opposite of this moment right here? I want you to grasp anxiety and depression for face value of what it is for you. And I really want you to tell yourself the opposite of those things. Everything that you could say in that moment that is the exact opposite. And I've done this to a lot of people. And if you take this the realistic way that I'm telling you, I promise you it helps me on a day-to-day basis, you guys. Tell yourself the opposite. It's not about cliche sayings. It's not about, if your saying is, I'm going to go do it, say don't do it. If you say, I'm about to act on this, say don't act on this. You're going to go inside to do it, immediately go outside. If you know the destination, stay away from that destination. Immediately tell yourself the opposite. So that's my message to you guys. GG5, thank you guys.
Yes.
And thank you guys for staying alive, because that means